What is it about this grant that you and EPA believe is problematic enough to freeze this funding and put potentially 31,000 children at risk?
Senator, who is the grant applicant?
This is to the city of Santa Ana.
You have the biggest, state, so we're going to have to go through every single list of the grant.
Well,
by the way, with that wind-up, by the way, I understand that you were an aspiring fiction writer. I see why.
Oh, yeah. Well, I understand your view that you can cut half of the agency and it won't affect people's health or their water or their air. That, to me, is a big fiction, Mr. Zeldin.
You
forgot
about the fact of cleaning up
I have to think,
LA
Mr. Zeldin, I think, Mr. Zeldin,
if
your children were drinking water, if your children were drinking water in Santa Ana, Mr. Zeldin, maybe you wouldn't be so cavalier about whether there was lead in their water.
Adam Schiff just went scorched earth on Trump's EPA chief. In one of the most fiery confrontations on Capitol Hill, Schiff accused the agency of deliberately poisoning America's air and water, and leaving behind a legacy of cancer for children and families across the country. This wasn't just politics, it was personal.
The gentleman from California, Mr. Schiff, is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Zeldin, you've only been at the EPA for a few months, but in that time, you've done more to dismantle this agency than probably all of your predecessors put together. That may be a source of pride for you, but it is not for the American people. You've unlawfully terminated grants without justification. You've fired and pushed out some of the best scientists who inform EPA's decision-making. You refuse to spend money that Congress has appropriated to the EPA by law, and you've launched a pro-polluter effort to delete dozens of environmental protections. On top of all this, you've launched an effort to overturn California's Clean Air Act waivers that improve the quality of air breathed by 40 million Californians and by millions more in other states who have adopted California's high standards. That effort, for which my colleagues have decided to eliminate the filibuster to achieve, is not exactly what anyone would call cooperative federalism. But it's your budget that's the ultimate proof of your priorities. You propose cutting America's environmental agency by 55%, meaning that in your view, and that of President Trump, more than half of the environmental efforts of the EPA, more than half of the efforts to make sure Americans have clean air and clean water are just a waste. They're just a waste. Meaning that Californians and people all over the country, when they breathe the air, thanks to your good work, it'll mean there's more diesel and more other particulate matter in the air. When they drink a glass of water, they may not be able to see it, but this water that Americans drink is going to have more chemicals like PFAS, forever chemicals in their water. This will be your good work. I want to be very specific about the legacy you're going to leave if you're successful in eliminating half of our efforts to clean our water and our air. Your legacy will be more lung cancer. It'll be more bladder cancer. It'll be more head and neck cancer. It'll be more breast cancer. It'll be more leukemia and pancreatic cancer, more liver cancer, more skin cancer, more kidney cancer, more testicular cancer, more colorectal cancer, more rare cancers of innumerable varieties. That will be your legacy. I don't know that that's a legacy that anyone should want to have. My kids are going to be breathing that air just like yours. My family's going to be drinking the water just like yours. We may not be able to pinpoint just who gets cancer because you've done away with half the budget of those looking out for our clean water and clean air. But it's going to be somebody's kids, it's going to be somebody's family. To put this in more specific terms, there are 22 grants frozen by the EPA focused on improving health and reducing pollution, many of which directly impact children. For example, one project in Santa Ana, California, provided funding to help detect and prevent lead poisoning in children. According to the census, about 10% of the population in Santa Ana are under the age of 9. With a population of about 310,000 people, that means that 31,000 children are at risk of lead poisoning in Santa Ana without this funding. What is it about this grant that you and EPA believe is problematic enough to freeze this funding and put potentially 31,000 children at risk?
Senator, who is the grant applicant?
This is to the city of Santa Ana.
You have the biggest,
And are
you have the
you-
biggest
are you-
state, so
and
we're
are
going to have to
you-
go through every single list of the grant.
Well,
by the way, with that wind-up, by the way, I understand that you were an aspiring fiction writer. I see why.
Oh, yeah. Well, I understand your view that you can cut half of the agency and it won't affect people's health or their water, their air. That, to me, is a big fiction, Mr. Zeldin.
You've forgot about the fact of cleaning up
I have
after
to think,
LA
Mr. Zeldin,
wildfires.
I think, Mr.
President,
Zeldin,
when I was in San Diego,
if your children were
with the
drinking
Tijuana
water,
River sewage crisis,
if your
apparently we're
children
going
were
out on our
drinking
own for
water
that.
in Santa Ana, Mr. Zeldin, maybe you wouldn't be so cavalier about whether there was lead in their water. Maybe you would give a damn instead of coming in here and suggesting that any grant that takes lead out of the water must be waste, fraud, or abuse because you
gentleman's
need
time has
because
expired.
you
Who said
need
that? The whole
the
thing,
money for a
everything
tax
you
cut
said,
for rich people
your time. It's all
because
make-believe.
you're totally beholden to the oil industry.
The
You
gentleman's time.
you could give a rat's ass about how much
It's
cancer
because
your
people
agency
you're trying to
causes.
destroy.
The
Impeach,
gentleman's
resist.
time has expired.
The hearing opens with Schiff laying it out, blunt and brutal. You've done more to dismantle this agency than probably all of your predecessors put together. That accusation sets the tone. Schiff isn't just talking about bureaucratic reshuffling. He's talking about unlawful grant terminations, firing scientists, refusing to spend money Congress already approved, and launching what he calls a pro-polluter crusade. And here's the kicker. Schiff zeroes in on California's clean air waivers, protections that have been a model for states across the country. Overturning them doesn't just weaken regulations, it signals a national rollback, a race to the bottom where pollution wins and public health loses. Then Schiff drops the hammer with numbers, a 55% cut to the EPA budget. More than half of America's environmental efforts gone. That's not trimming fat, that's gutting the agency designed to keep our air breathable and our water drinkable. And Schiff makes it vivid. He doesn't just talk about cuts, he talks about the consequences. More diesel in the air, more forever chemicals in the water, and a legacy of cancers, lung, bladder, breast, leukemia, pancreatic, skin, kidney, even rare forms. It's the kind of speech designed not just for the hearing room, but for the history books and the evening news. Schiff's voice rises as he says, "My kids are going to be breathing that air just like yours. My family's going to be drinking the water just like yours." This is political theater, yes, but also raw moral outrage. And Schiff knows exactly where to drive it home: the children. He points to 22 frozen grants, including one in Santa Ana, California, designed to prevent lead poisoning in children. Without it, 31,000 kids could be exposed to lead. That's not abstract, that's a whole generation at risk. But when Schiff presses Zelden, the acting EPA chief, on why the grant was cut, Zelden tries to dodge. And then he takes a swing back, with a smirk. "By the way, with that wind-up, I understand you were an aspiring fiction writer. I see why." That's Zelden mocking Schiff, calling his entire argument nothing but a work of fiction. But Schiff doesn't flinch. He turns it right back around. The real fiction, he says, is believing you can slash the EPA by half and not hurt people's health. That, he fires back, is the fantasy. And then Schiff twists the knife. If your children were drinking water in Santa Ana, maybe you wouldn't be so cavalier about whether there was lead in it. Maybe you'd give a damn. This is the heart of the exchange. Schiff accuses Zelden not only of neglect, but of selling out America's kids for tax cuts for the wealthy and loyalty to big oil. His words are meant to sting. You could give a rat's ass about how much cancer your agency causes, Boom, mic drop. Schiff's time runs out, but the damage is done. This wasn't just another oversight hearing. It was a showdown about the future of environmental policy in America. Schiff framed the EPA cuts not as an accounting choice, but as a moral crime. He painted the agency head as a villain whose legacy will be written not in policy books, but in the rising cancer rates of ordinary Americans. It's powerful rhetoric, and it reveals something about how Democrats are waging these fights. They're not just talking about regulations, they're telling stories of poisoned children, contaminated water, and families destroyed. And Schiff's performance here shows how environmental debates are being reframed. Not about the economy versus the environment, but about life versus death. The EPA chief tried to shrug it off with a cheap shot about Schiff being a fiction writer. But Schiff flipped it, turning the jab into a devastating counterpunch. In politics, moments like this stick. And Schiff wanted this one to stick to Zelden's name forever. Adam Schiff just put the EPA on trial, and he didn't mince words. The question is whether this fiery confrontation will actually change policy, or if it will just become another viral clip in Washington's endless battles. One thing is certain, Schiff made it clear. This fight is not about red tape. It's about cancer, kids, and the air we breathe. What do you think? Was Schiff right to go this hard, or was this just political theater? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next showdown on Capitol Hill.